It's time for TPG Live. The on-camera portion of our roundtable is joined by Drew Falkman, CEO at Friends, Mofaluke Okarimi, Director of Products at Tracer Imaging, Paul Hurwitz, Connexus Unity Product Manager at IPC Systems, and me, Jeremy Horn, the Product Guy. We will be talking about the role of AI in product management, the complexity of simplicity, Web3, is it in your roadmap, and much more, all coming up next on TPG Live, your go-to platform for all things product management, connecting you with industry leaders, trendsetters, and a global community of insights and unique perspectives. This is the Product Way. This show is brought to you by The Product Mentor, a free program that's making a meaningful difference in the world of product management. With a footprint in over 20 countries, The Product Mentor is where mentors come from esteemed companies you know and trust, like Google, American Express, Etsy, Oracle, and many more. Head over to theproductmentor.com to learn more. As the Product Mentor looks to the future, the first half of 2024 is shaping up to be a very exciting time. A new session and website are on the horizon, and they're actively seeking mentors. If you've ever considered contributing to the community, now is the perfect time. So why wait? Visit theproductmentor.com today to learn more and sign up. It's an opportunity to make a real impact, both on your career and the broader product management community. Don't let this chance pass you by. This show is brought to you by The Product Group. The Product Group isn't just another meetup. It's a thriving community that's been the go-to hub for product enthusiasts since 2009. The experience. You're sitting in a close-knit roundtable setting, either in person or virtually via TPG Live on YouTube. The conversation starts, and you're suddenly part of a dynamic dialogue that's as electrifying as it is enlightening. Who's this meetup for? Whether you're a product manager in a startup, a designer in a Fortune 500, a seasoned chief officer, or a student aspiring to break into the industry, the Product Group has a seat for you at the roundtable. It's a diverse community where you'll find a blend of fresh perspectives and seasoned wisdom, covering everything from the latest industry trends to timeless best practices. If you're ready to elevate your game and enrich your network, head over to meetup.com/pro/theproductgroup and join a chapter near you today. And if you're feeling adventurous, why not start a chapter in your own city? Just shoot an email to Jeremy Horn, aka The Product Guy, at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. Are you looking to elevate your brand in the product management space? Partner with The Product Way, the go-to product management channel featuring a variety of shows like TPG Live. With a dedicated and diverse audience of product professionals, from newcomers to C-level execs, your brand will be front and center in conversations that matter. We offer exclusive sponsorship packages that put your message in the spotlight. Don't miss this chance to elevate your brand while contributing to the community. Email us at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. Hello, product people. Are you ready to be part of the conversation that's shaping the world of product management? This is TPG Live, and I'm Jeremy Horn, also known as the Product Guy, and we are about to begin. This is your stage, no matter where you are in your product journey, from startups to Fortune 500s, interns to CEOs. We're a global community that values every voice. And that's what sets us apart. TPG Live is more than a show. It's a conversation shaped by you, whether you're on camera or off. Your insights, questions, and topics are what make this roundtable truly global and inclusive. TPG Live is not just another product management program. It's a community dialogue that spans the globe. So get ready to engage and amplify your impact. Let's meet the roundtable.
I am the Connexus Unity product manager at a company called IPC Systems. We are the leader in telecom solutions for capital market traders. Before this, I was working at different health tech and pharma tech companies for about 10 years. And I've got, in general, over 15 years of B2B product management experience in both the fintech and health tech worlds. I am also a volunteer EMT with my local fire department. And I'm an avid cyclist, biking over 150 miles a month. A lot of that on my folding bike, which I use to get into New York City these days. And I'm also a pragmatic marketing certified product manager and have been for a while.
I started way back in Web 1. I had an agency with a couple partners, and we sort of grew that. And I just caught the bug for product, and I realized that what I really loved was that like 0 to 1 product development, and got into lean startup and user research. And I've worked with a bunch of startups. I've done a lot of consulting over the years with companies like Adobe and HP. I started a product strategy practice for a consultancy called Most Create. And now I'm running my own company, doing my own product with community growth tools, a product called Friends.
My name is Mafuluke. I'm the director of digital products at Tracer Imaging. I have a background in product marketing and a bit of software development. And I've spent the past 3 years building a 0 to 1 business, launching the D2C business for Tracer Imaging, which is TilePix, a direct competitor to Mixed Tiles. We're integrated in Walgreens, about 8,500 locations for same-day pickup. And that's me.
Our first topic of the night is on the role of AI in product management. So we're going to be talking a little bit about, I think, one of the hot topics. One of the hotter topics of the moment is AI. I think there's a lot of areas for debate, for agreement, disagreement, and so I guess let me just say, and this is where you guys can kind of all unmute yourselves and jump into the conversation with whatever your thoughts are. Let me just start simply. Is there a role for AI in product management? Drew.
I think they're definitely. Oh, sorry.
Or Paul.
Go ahead, Drew.
Go for it, Paul.
I was just going to say, I think there's definitely a role for AI in product management. I think there's a role for AI in just about everything tech that companies are working on. But I think from a product management perspective, where I currently am, there's a lot of regulatory stuff that we have to deal with, both in my prior life in the healthcare world and now in the fintech world, where there's so much regulatory issues to deal with that who knows exactly what it's going to turn out to be.
Yeah, I can add to that. I've been working on a course for LinkedIn Learning, and it all started because I started playing around with some of these like UI tools that are coming out for AI. And so it's basically on doing design with AI, and there are some tools that are absolutely amazing where you can draw a sketch of a UI, and you can scan it in, take a picture, upload it, and the AI will actually take that sketch that you drew in pencil, and it'll fill in like the image area with an image, and it'll do all the stuff. And I think that kind of tool, and they have other tools where you can take like a Figma design and you can convert it directly into Swift or React or Flutter. This kind of stuff is going to make our jobs so much easier because it's going to speed the time to getting prototypes up and time to getting from prototype to code. And that speed allows us to test more. It allows us to iterate more. It allows us to be better at what we do. So I'm really excited for these tools.
When you guys are looking at AI, do you see this as a net positive, or are we looking at maybe people need to be more resistant to AI, and maybe playing my little bit of a devil's advocate role right now, being more resistant to AI to protect product manager jobs from being eliminated? Maluke, what are your thoughts?
I wouldn't I wouldn't say resistant to AI to protect product management jobs because there are just so many jobs that, if you think about it, it could end up taking. I work a lot with images, and one of the really cool tools I've seen is you can take literally any photo. I can take a photo of my shoes, and it could place this on any. It could basically make photo shoots for you on the fly, which is a little insane if you think about it, but very, very, very cool. So I won't say I'm resistant to it. I'm just a little careful about using it, if that makes a lot of sense.
Well, in what way? What has you? I guess. What is it correct? Should I say cautiously optimistic?
Cautiously optimistic, actually. That pretty much sums it up. Because
Well, why?
the thing about AI is you have to keep using it. The more you use it, the better informed it gets. So I'm very excited to use it. But then when you're using it, you sort of realize it feels a little bit like an echo chamber. It picks something that might be wrong and it feeds it to you as the answer. And it's your job to correct it and say, well, no, that's not correct. So you could choose to use it, but there has to be like, there sort of has to be someone standing there and looking at it to make sure everything's okay.
I was going to say I agree with Mofuluke that there's got to be like a sanity check when something comes out of AI. There's got to be a way for people to look at it. I mean, there was a lot of this going on with like machine learning there was a lot of data coming out of machine learning and early AI stuff that was just data. Uh, in terms of everybody wanted to know, okay, there's this black box that's producing something, but how do we understand what that black box is and how it's producing it? I think there's a lot that has to come forward about that so that people have um, a level of being comfortable with what's coming out of the AI.
Right. But so you're kind of you're touching on like one of the hot spots there, right? It's the bias. It's bias in AI. I guess, do you think it's possible to actually ever truly get an unbiased AI? Should we be trying to?
Yeah, I think you have to try to get an unbiased perspective. Now, whether this perspective is truly unbiased, that's a different conversation. But you need to sort of eliminate that bias as much as you possibly can, because there's using AI to answer questions or generate prototypes is that's not life or death, but you could involve AI in these life or death scenarios that you need to eliminate the bias from.
I mean, with all this talk about AI lately, because generative AI is like the new thing, but the reality is like machine learning has been around for a while, and all this stuff, all of AI is it's really just as good as the data is, right? So they're warning you like not to do legal contracts and stuff, and I've had ChatGPT write legal contracts and they look good to me. I don't know if I would want to, actually like file a brief that I wrote in ChatGPT or anything. That would probably get me a lot of trouble. Um, but when someone takes, that same technology and trains it on a database of actual court cases, actual, documents that have been filed successfully, now you're going to have a tool that's probably going to be really powerful and most likely pretty good. So it's the data that's there, and a lot of this stuff is just training on the internet. Um, and the internet, there's maybe not all truth and good things on the internet.
Yeah. From Zane, Zane was asking. He's curious to get our opinions. Um, is this AI revolution evolution thing? Is it gonna? Do you guys think it's gonna result in fewer product jobs, different product jobs?
I don't know if it'll be fewer. I think product might look a little different. And there have been different things over the years that have happened before now, whether it was machine learning, whether it was different like whiteboarding tools or the like different ways of producing sketches and things like that. All these different tools that have happened over the years, do they make things better, eliminate our jobs, make them worse? Who knows? I think that remains to be seen. I don't think it'll ever eliminate product jobs. I do think it'll evolve them into something that we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. If these tools, like Drew was talking about before, for making sketches and things like that, get to such a degree that there might be a need for less UX designers in the future, that might be possible, and it could eliminate some of those. But I don't know.
So
that
you were
could...
saying, so you're saying it's good we have less UX designers?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think because there's the bias in everything. Who knows what the bias will bring in creating a new design, a new product, and things like that. I think things will change. We just don't know what that's going to look like.
Oh, so what's different? Why would there be less UX designers but not less product managers?
I'm just saying, just for example, this tool that Drew had mentioned that takes your sketch and turns it into a design, or turns it into a something that you can work with, that could lead to the need for fewer UX designers on a team, because you don't need them necessarily from the get-go of what you're working on, and you may only need them when it comes to coming up with really finalized high fidelity designs.
A lot of the stuff that, especially when you start getting down to like the product owner type jobs, just writing of user stories, it can be automated. There are a lot of things that frankly are just busy work, and they don't require a lot. The main job of a product manager, in terms of getting buy-in from different departments and different companies and all that, that's AI is never going to do that. It's going to hurting people and dealing with people. There's always going to be someone that needs to facilitate that. But I think some of these sort of entry-level task-oriented jobs are going to be eliminated, or at least shortened. I mean, I would challenge anyone to go to ChatGPT, and type in, write a user story and describe a UI or something, or put together a strategy for a product and give it a basic thing, and you'll be surprised what it comes up with. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but it's not always realistic. It doesn't always take into account different things that a human would. So, at this point, there's going to be a lot of intermediating that's going to need to be done.
So how has everyone been using AI in their job? Have you been using AI?
Yeah, I use it all the time. I'm lazy.
So get what specific examples, Drew? What have you been doing with it?
Well, I've been doing a lot of things. I tend to keep ChatGPT open a lot of the time, and just see what it spits out. And it a lot of times will help give a kickstart to writing content, to doing things that frankly are just, they take a little bit of time and they're not very rewarding. And even just starting outlines for things, it's surprising how quick it can just give me a little boost. And then the tools that I've told you, I've been working with AWS Amplify, which is sort of a low code tool for building sort of the prototype that we're working on. And I'm pretty surprised actually at how well we can put things together pretty quickly, faster than we would have done, if we just went the normal route.
Yeah, I'll tell you. In my experience, I ChatGPT, the other one, what is it? Begins with a C, right? Claude. Both of the I use both of those tools actually a good bit. For someone like myself, who once I get going, things go fine, but that first step can sometimes be a little bit stickier than the rest of the project. ChatGPT just helps me kind of get that wheel going, or even using it to help brainstorm ideas or flesh out concepts. It's not that I take it verbatim. It's it's uh, it's something that helps me think through the process. So for me, it's a great tool. And in some cases, some of this might have been something I would have maybe delegated to a junior product manager. But now, in a matter of a few minutes, I can kind of get all these iterations in, figure out what I really was trying to help kind of organize my own thoughts, figure out what I wanted to say, and I can get there a lot faster. Um, so I do see the role evolving and changing, and I use it quite frequently. It helps keep the thoughts going. Helps when I'm looking for ideas or brainstorm, or just even if it's not right, at least I can then say why it's not right and move forward from there. But I think, Paul, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, going back to exactly what Drew was saying before, where when you're working on getting the stakeholder agreement, when you're looking to get the buy-in, when you're trying to herd all the cats to get agreement on what you should be doing with the product, that's actually mostly what I'm focusing on now. My role is really focused on the discovery and the business side of things, and a lot less on the writing user stories and epics and things like that. So for that exact reason that Drew had said before, I don't really have the capability to use some of these AI tools, just because it needs that human touch that I have to do. Ralph actually just posted an interesting follow-up question. He was saying, if AI were to, quote, take over as product owner, would it also take accountability for everything that gets published out, good and bad? And that's where I think we were talking a little bit before about the sanity check, that we don't know, uh, you don't necessarily, if you don't know who wrote the AI that you're using, and know where and know the body of data that it's getting its data from, you need to look at everything that's coming out and make sure it's what you want. And like you were saying, Jeremy, you're never going to probably use Chat GPT to publish your final issue, but you might just use it to help you, and then you polish off what you want it to be.
Yep. So so how can Chat GPT, or not Chat GPT? I got a little specific there. AI. Um, what should we be having AI do to help make product managers' lives a little bit easier? Mofaluke?
I guess for me, like we said earlier, that brainstorming piece is super helpful because when you put stuff in, it gives you the data it gives you sort of gets your brain flowing and thinking about it a little bit because you actually can't take it verbatim. It doesn't sound human or natural. So that piece I think makes my life a little easier. Makes my life a little easier. I think
What
that's
about, I
about
don't know,
it
what
for
about
me.
writing user stories, prioritizing features?
Writing user stories, yes, but I also think it still needs that human touch. When you have a team, there's this sort of there's a language that you have when you've worked with people for a long time that AI does not necessarily have. It doesn't take into account people's constraints. It doesn't take into account the fact that, I don't know, we spell words differently sometimes from different countries. So yes, you can use it to write the user stories and to prioritize, but you still need that human touch to sort of polish it off.
Today, at least.
Today, at
Yeah,
least, yes.
yeah. I mean, I think it can support us in a lot of ways. One of the people I met with recently, they have a company called UserCube. I think their website's tryusercue.com. And what they're building is this AI tool that actually generates intelligent surveys that you can send out to get quantitative data on your app. And it's really cool. You like fill in a few prompts, it asks you some questions, and then it puts together not just like a list of questions, but actually an intelligent tree with if then loops that sort of go into different arrays of questions depending on how the other person answered it. I mean, they're fairly complicated surveys. They would take you hours to build. And they're put together pretty intelligently and using sort of best practice wording and things like that for surveys, because you don't want to bias people in the questions. And look, that's a great use for it. Anything where you're getting data, or where you have a lot of work putting something together that's kind of formulaic like that, like putting together a survey, I think it can really speed your time to get these things done.
I think that somebody was saying I was just saying, somebody was saying in the chat, and I 100% agree. When it comes to some of the stuff like product marketing, I'm doing a lot of work on product marketing now, creating collateral and working with the product teams to make sure that we have the tools for our sales teams to be able to sell our products. I think there's what could be a good use for AI there in writing some of that or creating that content for us. And so for me, that like that kind of stuff where there's just some busy work that has to get done can certainly take advantage of AI.
What shouldn't it be doing? Or where do you see the limitations? Like where do you see that you don't expect it to ever be?
Specifically from a product management perspective, or are you talking in a broader?
Sure. Yeah. Let's go product management. We don't need to go too far out of our lane, at least this evening.
From my perspective, I think that it should never be the end all be all when it comes to knowing what the customer and the user wants. You can use it maybe to get data and start, like you were saying, Jeremy, use it to start things. But there's got to be that human element that's digesting the data and looking at, what's the voice of the customer telling us? And I don't think that AI can ever completely supplant the need for a product manager doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I think in terms of
I feel like I've had some product managers where I'd question whether or not they got the right takeaways from what the customer had told them. But Drew?
Yeah, that's exactly sort of the line that I was thinking under is, having done consulting, which you've done as well, and sort of coming into product management teams that maybe aren't as honed as others. You see people doing more reactive product management, and you could totally replace that with AI. Like people want this feature, that feature. I mean, the code can literally generate itself. I could see that happening. But where you're not going to get it is the truly innovative things, like anticipating by understanding the needs of customers and users, anticipating what they're going to want before they even can articulate it. And that kind of product management, which is like the gold standard, is I don't know how you do that with AI. Maybe someday, but I think it's going to be a while before we can get that kind of thing working fully.
Has anyone read the book I Am Code? I'm looking around the room, seeing if heads wiggle up and down. Now, I Am Code. It's a book written by an AI, poetry book that got published. You might say the people who prompted this AI, which was Da Vinci 2. I think I'll go by I guess it's more official name, Code Da Vinci 2. And in the book, I guess they kind of make a point of these AIs, all it's doing is predicting what words come next. So what stops it from predicting, since it's trying to figure out, like, it doesn't necessarily understand the words, but it's I guess a word calculator that's figuring out what words come next. It doesn't seem to be a giant leap anyway, for it to say what features come next, or what needs come next, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a book. I read the book. I think the poetry, not the best I've read, but it's a fun read, and I found the editor's introduction or preamble to the poetry to be, I found the most interesting part of the book. So it's a fun read. It's a very quick read. And I'd not to make our AI overlord too angry. Not my most favorite poetry that I've read either. But that's I just thought I'd mention that. Anyone else have other things they wanted to say about AI and its intersection with product management?
I going back to something that I said before about the regulatory and compliance issues. I think that, especially in my company, I know for sure that there's some hesitancy to use AI too much before we know what the regulatory agencies are going to say, especially when it comes to incorporating AI into the product itself. And there was definitely some of that hesitancy also when I was working in healthcare companies. Nobody wants an AI going and creating a product that's needed to help a patient, or help a doctor treat a patient, or things like that, because there's just so much unknown there. I think it'll come. I just think it needs to figure out how it's going to work.
I wasn't saying to have it do everything tomorrow, but yeah, it's doing pretty well at finding disease, figuring out shapes of proteins. I understand that's a good thing. I don't know what that means, but definitely a lot of interesting stuff there. Anything else? Anything else from the on-camera roundtable or our off-camera roundtable? As I look at our comments to see if anyone's had any other comments on AI before I transition to our other big topic of the night.
But again, I think just one more thing I'll add before we jump to that is, analyzing data. And I think, understanding how users are experiencing a website, whether it's, satisfaction and, just looking at analytics, I still think it's way too complicated. And I think there's a lot of room to intelligently analyze that data and really help you get a better picture of how people are experiencing your app. And I'm waiting for those tools.
So everyone, yeah, keep the comments, questions coming. We're going to be talking about. We're going to be switching gears a little bit. We'll see how much our gears shift. To talk about customer centricity, complexity. I think these are definitely some interesting topics. I know these are areas that we as product people can kind of struggle with from time to time, and as we kind of go into this topic, also again for our audience, our off-screen part of our roundtable here, if there's other topics, other avenues you'd like us to follow, please do suggest it. We'll take a look, and I'll try to make time for as many different topics or many different areas for us all to explore and discuss today. So in the realm of customer centricity and complexity here, I guess let's start with the simple stuff. I guess in looking at this quest for perfection, I don't like perfection. For the quest for like simplicity, the less is more approach. Is that less is more approach always the best approach when it comes to product features? Mufaluke?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was lagging a little bit. Well, in my experience, I actually do think less is more. Like, you could get tempted to give all this extra stuff. People always want more. You always want to give more, thinking it's going to push them over the edge. But what it actually leads to is people get confused and they get decision paralysis. It's too much all at once, and they actually end up not doing anything. So less is more actually is the gold standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would totally agree that less is usually more. If you have a product,
You said
and
usually.
I look at my current, usually, sometimes, when it comes to like technical products, whether it's like tools for developers to use, like for creating products, or certainly in some very technical fields, you might need products that are incredibly complex and have every bell and whistle that's needed, that's possible for doing what they need to do. I think that for most business applications, and most end user applications, that there's there's definitely an aspect, a huge value to less is more, where you give the customer exactly what they need and don't add on to it. If you've got thoughts on what could be the next great feature, sure, do your due diligence to see if that's what your current customer base or your desired customer base is looking for, and then work towards that. But even as you're adding new features or adding new products to a portfolio, you can still keep things pretty simple. We often, and I don't know, product managers, sometimes during interview questions, you get asked, what's one product that you absolutely love and why? And whenever I've gotten that question, I always say it's Dropbox. When Dropbox first started, its value to me was in its simplicity. It did what it did, and it did it really well. And I still think today that sure, they're adding stuff in, but it's just dead simple to use, and there's not a ton of complexity there, which I think is part of its value.
I was just going to add before we go over to Drew in that Dropbox, for people who are interested, also has some pre-interest, has been very open about kind of from their very beginnings to the present. And so if you kind of want to see how Dropbox started out in simplicity, they posted a lot of their initial pitch. You can find their initial pitch decks online of their initial products and iterations there. So it's a great kind of case study in minimum viable product, which really their minimum viable product, I believe, was a PowerPoint deck, and then they kind of went from there. So definitely something very interesting to check out for anyone interested. But Drew, let me hand it to you.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is like, I just, I've learned to do MVPs because I have to, because honest to God, I have a really hard time keeping it simple. Like, I know theoretically you just want to keep it simple and keep it to the minimal, and I'm constantly telling clients to do that. But for me, I always want to get that flashy thing in. I always want to get that, like, I see what I want to get parity with all the other competitors, and then I also want to get my own thing in, and it's obviously impossible. So I don't know. It's something I battle with like literally every day in this career. It's just how do you keep it? How do you do that? How do you keep it simple? And what do you eliminate? And they're tough questions. What do you eliminate to make it, to get something shipped? I don't know. It's a challenge for sure.
Apple's often recognized as to being a great example of simplicity in their products and their product design. I guess that, let me pose the question: can you only achieve that kind of true great simplicity in a product if you have a closed ecosystem like Apple? I figure I'll leave that one with you, Drew, since you were already pontificating and on the how of achieving.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. one of the advantages of the way things are moving now is it is getting a lot easier to interact and interoperate. Um, back in the day when you're talking about like Mac versus Windows, um, there were so many, like, you could plug and play, the whole plug and play thing that they had. It would find it and ideally install it, and then it never really worked, and then you had to go find drivers and all that. It's a nightmare. Um, but I think, especially in terms of all the web stuff, is technology has kind of settled for now. Things will obviously change, but it's like JavaScript is still kind of the main web programming language, and people are using JSON and that for interoperability and REST APIs, um, and I think that has made it a lot easier to do things. In fact, it's made it really easy to build things quickly because you can just plug in an API and all of a sudden you have a whole new feature in your app. So I don't think it's as critical as it used to be, but it certainly is easier if you're just working, if you're just committing to your own thing. I mean, I saw, not to bring it back to the AI design tools, but a lot of those tools were competitors to Figma. And so they were just finding ways, how can we differentiate? And so they built these kind of things in, um, because there can only be so many things. And then they ended up having to make it interoperable with Figma so that you can import your things into Figma to do, to export into React or whatever. So, um, yeah, it's a good question and it helps, but I think it is getting easier to have an open environment.
I would say it's definitely getting easier to have an open environment. And I mean, look, Google Android phones are probably just as easy and elegant to use these days as an Apple iPhone. So do you have to? And Google is the epitome of what an open ecosystem might be on a phone. So I don't think you have to have a closed system for some, or a closed ecosystem for to have that simplicity. It can help, especially in the early days of something. But like Drew was saying, with all these APIs out there, with all that you can access to do things, you kind of have to be open in many aspects. Um, so in healthcare, a lot of it is closed ecosystems because, like when I was working on medical devices that have embedded software, they have to be closed because you can't have interoperability with other things because that just brings in risk in having those products open. So sometimes you have to have that counterbalance of, I want it closed for certain reasons and keep it simple, or let it be open and you take those risks of having it open, whether that's from a complexity or a complexity point of view, or from a just a features and wants that customers have for your product.
Something you were saying earlier, Faluke, where you were saying, kind of talking about the less is more as one of those aspirational goals. I kind of wanted to poke at that a little bit more, in that, like, the simplicity in design always lead to a better user experience, always. I guess the thing I have in my mind as I ask this question is, I'm thinking Adobe Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, the world I've been in the past few days.
Well, I won't say it's always less is more. Like, I won't say that's true most of the time. It truly depends on the audience that you're catering to. If you're catering to simply end users, I feel less is always more because you don't know their background. You don't know how comfortable they are with whatever you're producing. But if this product is for a specific group of people that you know their background, for example, like you said, Photoshop, I won't, not everyone will pick up Photoshop and expect to be able to use it. You have to have some sort of experience or sort of know what you're doing, as opposed to going online to I don't know. I'm trying to find an example here, but going online to an open source thing and having all these bells and whistles thrown at you, it's very confusing, especially if I don't know anything. So For me, if you're catering to an end user that might have no idea, less is always better. You want to help them get to the end. And if you throw too much at them, they're going to get distracted and they're going to leave.
Do you have like as you're kind of talking through some of these examples, do you have like any specific products in mind that you're thinking about as you talk?
Well, I have to use like what I'm familiar with, and that is like mixed tiles. They have a really, really simple approach. You go in, you upload a photo, you choose your frame, and you check out. Now, they have all these other products that are in the background, but that they're very devoted into just that one line. Just go in, choose your photo, add a frame, and check out. They're not overcomplicating it. And you could get tempted to overcomplicate it because people always want more. You're looking at people and you're like, I could fix that, I could make it better, but it's not always the way to go. Sometimes just that single path is just the best way, at least with my experience.
I actually have a funny story about this. There was I worked with a company, they were a fintech company, and they handled managing the assets for banks when they were doing commercial properties, so the environmental inspections and all that kind of stuff. And so it was mainly bankers. So we, like, as consultants, we went sort of in and we're like, we're going to make this great app and it's going to be so cool and simple and user friendly. And we got our designers and we did all this and we made this big whiz bang thing. And in the end, they're bankers and they wanted something that looked like Excel. They hated it. And we ended up just like deconstructing it and making like this giant sort of Airtable looking thing. But that's what they wanted because that's the user and they're used to using Excel and that's where they're comfortable. So sometimes that's what you have to do.
So is listening, I guess, does listening to the customer and doing inevitably lead to too much complexity?
I guess it depends how much you listen to it.
A little bit. Well, listening to them probably will not lead to complexity. Acting on everything will lead to the complexity.
But I guess to that, can a product I guess you do want to listen to your customers. You're trying to solve for their problem and the business problem, right? But can the product be both? Can it both meet their needs and maybe even be highly customizable while still being simple at the same time? Or are those goals just inherently in conflict?
I mean, I think so. I think, I've worked with other things. One of the tools we worked with was a mobile tool for like creators, mostly like journalistic style, which was probably, 7 years ago or so. And the way that we had them entering things wasn't quite working. They didn't like it. And so, we played around with some different options and tested it with them. And, in the end, when we, had a new way to sort of create their new media, they loved it. And our user rates went up and, fewer people abandoned and all that kind of good stuff. So, definitely it helps and you can interpret it, but you have to interpret it correctly.
At one of my previous companies that I worked for, we created connected smart pill bottles to help patients remember take their medications. And an overarching goal of the company was...
Wait, hold on. I gotta stop you. I got questions. I've got questions. Hold on a sec. So are you saying there was a pill bottle, that had Bluetooth connectivity?
So when I was there, it did not have Bluetooth. It actually had cellular connectivity.
Awesome.
And that goes to my point of being dead simple. The overarching goal, yes, it was a bottle that had cellular connectivity, and it beeped at you, and it lit up when it was time to take your medications. And it had cellular communications, so the back-end software knew if the bottle wasn't opened at the right time for a patient to take their dose. But one of the overarching goals was we knew the customer profile was somebody who was probably somewhere between 50 and 80 years old, who may not be the most tech savvy kind of a person. The younger people who needed to remember to take medications, they were probably using apps on their phone, is what our discovery found. But the older people may not be as comfortable setting reminders on their phone or whatever. So yes, they got this bottle that beeped at them and lit up, and they would get a text message that said, "Hey, we saw that you missed your dose. Is everything okay?" But there was a conscious decision to make it so that there was no app that was associated with the bottle. Nothing that the patient had to do. It was all set up for them. And if they needed a change in how it was working, whether it was their dosage schedule changed or whatever, they just picked up the phone or texted, said, "Hey, my doctor said to change this." And we would end up changing it for them on the back end. Oftentimes, we'd have to connect with their oncologist or whatnot in order to make sure that it was correct. But there a conscious decision was made to keep it super simple for the end user who was the patient.
I gotcha. I'm still thinking about how many other things I can have in my house with Bluetooth on them. I guarantee, to the chagrin of my wife, everything in my house is connected. I had to get rid of the garbage can that was also connected to the Wi-Fi. That one had to go. Sorry, it's a thing I can't let go of. Sorry, just let me hand it over to Mafaluke. Anything you wanted to add to what Paul was saying?
I guess it's basically just, I totally agree with you. You have to know who your audience is, and you have to build to that demographic. If that demographic has, if they need the bells and whistles, if they want the bells and whistles, then yes. But if that demographic, if the point is just this one simple thing, you don't need to overcomplicate it. They don't want that, and they don't need it.
So what strategies do you guys have where to collect all that user feedback, to be collecting the user feedback, to where and then integrating into a product where you are still maintaining and managing the simple, keeping it simple without it ballooning out of control. I was going to hand it over to you, Drew, but I heard about some of your challenges. Unless you wanted to jump in here on this one.
I'm okay doing it. It's a reality of the job. And this is where I can't wait for AI to step in and help us out, because I think it is really complicated. I think it is a matter of, our general process, when, at least for me, when I'm working with products, is I want to understand, like, especially because I'm working 0 to 1, like early products, pre-seed, seed level startups. And the question really is, where are risks? What assumptions are we making, and can we de-risk those? So I tend to take an organized approach from the get-go, and I'm less looking about features as understanding, the user journey of our users, and understanding, and trying to eliminate some of the risky assumptions we're making, and doing whatever we can to test. And for me, it's, the more you can try things out, whether it's through user research or through like landing page tests and concierge tests and those kinds of things, I think the more likely you are to not waste a bunch of time building a product that nobody wants.
The as you take in as you take in all the inputs from your customers, you're hearing feature requests, you're hearing needs and requirements. Can you? I think one of the things I heard someone say here is that you shouldn't listen to everything they have to say. And to that, I guess I guess again, putting my devil's advocate hat on again, a hat I love to wear. Does that mean that being truly customer centric is in conflict with being a highly profitable company?
Oh, so, can you restate that question? I'm not quite sure I
Sure.
fully
Well, you said
grasp what
I
you were
saw you
asking there.
shake your head no, so I already know your answer. Here's the question: um, the is being a truly customer centric company in conflict with being a highly profitable company? If
Okay,
you're
that's
not
what I
going to be
thought you
listening,
were
yeah,
asking.
is it because if you're not going to listen to everything that the customers are asking for, if you're not going to do what they're asking.
But just because we know as product managers, just because a customer is asking for a new feature in the product, that's not necessarily really what they're looking for. I mean, they have a problem that they're looking to solve. And if you talk to, I don't know, say 50 customers, and they might be asking you for different features, but in the end, they all want to solve the exact same problem, and you build one new feature that solves that problem and does it well, you're going to have happy customers. You're going to hopefully be successful, and you are being customer centric. You're just not necessarily being sales led or customer led when it comes to your product management. So I think there's a line there between customer centric versus customer led growth or customer led product development.
What about where they're not asking you for features, but they're asking you to solve problems, and they're asking you to solve 50 different problems?
Well, then the company has to make a decision. Are we in the business of solving these problems? Sometimes a company has to say, you know what? We're solving these three problems with our product. This is our strong suit. This is what we can do. And we're going to say no to to solving these other problems. That might be that might lead to losing some customers, um, which I guess would go against the whole notion of can you be wildly successful and be customer centric at the same time. But there, it's a balancing act. You can't say yes to everything and solve every problem that a customer has. It was funny, I worked for a budgeting and financial forecasting software company when I lived back in Boston. And there were customers that I spoke to, and they were like, we need you to solve this problem in a budgeting package as part of our budgeting process every year. And I would tell them flat out, I'm sorry, we can't do that. There are certain industries that do budgeting in different ways. Banks do budget, and real estate do budgeting different than from others. There's some other industries that like their budgeting is just a different kind of process, and they look at the numbers a little bit differently. And we couldn't do certain budgeting features for those industries. We had made the decision we're not going to do that. But we did everything else that we did so well that we sometimes got customers from those industries because they're like, well, you can budget the rest of this really well. I'll continue doing the rest in Excel. So even when I told customers, I can't solve that problem for you, but I can solve this one instead. If you solve the problems that you're setting out to solve and do it really well, you could still be wildly successful, even if you can't solve the customers every problem that they have.
Drew, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have anything to add necessarily. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You have to, there's two pieces to it, right? There's one is listening to the customer and understanding the customer user, um, depending on how you're looking at it and what app you're doing. And then the other is what is the product vision, right? And so I think one of the important things for senior product managers and product leaders is they need to be really clear on like, look, these are the things we're focusing on. And sometimes it's a quarterly thing that you are changing up, and sometimes it's a longer thing. Like this is our niche, and this is where we're residing. And so features that are on the edge of this, they're going to be secondary to ones that are core.
Do you like for the broader roundtable, for the people here as well, on camera, off camera? Do you folks have? Are there effective methods that people have used, where you're gathering and implementing customer feedback in a way to improve simplicity? Are there methodologies? Are there approaches that people recommend? What do you do to gather user feedback, while also protecting and maybe even improving on the simplicity of your product?
Going back to our previous topic, this is one of those areas where I think it would be great if somebody could do that for you, but I'm not sure that AI could make those decisions for you. I think that's a person or a group of people have to make those decisions of what's going to make the cut, what's not. That's more company vision, product vision, and whatnot, as opposed to, is there a methodology that you can use to make those decisions for you?
Mufaluke?
I won't say I disagree, but at least in my experience, I've used stuff like session replay, and AI is actually super helpful there that will point you to, well, this is a problem area, and give you an aggregate number of videos or screenshots or whatever you might need to sort of hone in on the problem, and then you can come up with your solutions. But at least it's pointing you to where a potential issue might be, which I don't know, someone else could watch a whole database of videos and might not be able to pick that up.
Something. So Jason, I saw Jason just mentioned to use product discovery tools. Jason, what tools are you using? And I guess are people on camera, any of you using any product discovery tools you would recommend?
I've used Pendo a lot in terms of collecting data and using that as a tool to be able to help me sift through that data, and see what the customers are looking for and how they're using the products. I happen to really love Aha, in terms of a tool that can give me some framework as I'm doing my product discovery work, to be able to really organize it well and tie it together well, in ways that I can look at it to do my product discovery.
One of my favorite tools to use is Full Story. It's like an analytics tool, but what's cool about it is it actually captures instead of like Hotjar records what the user does and as video, this actually records it in the DOM. So it actually saves the source and records the interactions the users are doing. So you can replay them later, but also because it's recording those, you can actually quantify them and do filters on them. And so you can have certain events that, just show me all the people that did these 4 events in succession. And then it'll give you like all of the users that did, and you can go in and watch what they did. And that's really helpful, actually, to actually see the user interacting with the product. It's a good tool.
Yeah, Full Story has definitely been one of my favorite tools to use over the years. Any other tool recommendations? No. All right. Anyone else have anything else they want to add before I switch gears to our next topic or set of topics on customer centricity and complexity. Anything here or on the other part of our roundtable? I'm not seeing any other comments, questions, or other themes that people would like us to go into. So with that said, I'm going to jump over to some of our other things that we were kind of discussing before the show. And I know one of the questions that got raised, and I'll definitely be interested I'm very curious and very interested in hearing more about this. And that how can communities be more helpful to product managers or for product managers? What are communities doing well or not doing well, or what are some of those problems to be solved?
I can start since I have the
Sure.
main screen and have a community product. So one of the things I learned, I've been working in blockchain for the last couple of years pretty regularly. And in blockchain, everything is sort of decentralized. The products are ideally. And even if they're not, it's a lot of the users tend to reject analytics tools and they have blockers up. So you really don't have user data in the way that you do in a Web 2 product, which is a real challenge. However, all these products, whether it's an NFT or whether it's a decentralized finance or games, whatever people are building, they tend to have communities, and that's sort of how they manage their marketing. But it's also how you can be really close to your users because they're in Discord or they're in Slack or whatever it is. In Web3, it's usually Discord. And they're just chatting away about your product and about all the problems that are adjacent to and central to what you're solving with the product. And for me, it's been absolutely invaluable to have that kind of conversation going on because I can, grab someone and take them onto a chat and have a call with them. There's not to mention just all the information that comes out of simply just listening to what's the conversation that's happening and really getting to know your users in a way, not just around the product like you would with user interviews and user research, but like, what are they also interested in? Why are they're there primarily to be around whatever it is that your thing does. But then they're also like talking about other things. And so you have a pretty good idea. I mean, I was hanging out in Discord all the time and I learned a lot. So I think these kind of communities can be really valuable for companies. And I think companies have tended to use communities mostly for support as a way of sort of doing peer-to-peer support and taking the load off their own technical support, which is fine and great. They can help each other. But I think leaning on it more from a marketing and product standpoint, we really get to know our customers better and how to better market them and how to build better products for them. So I really think that they can be a valuable tool for product managers.
That's a good point. You mentioned Discord. So where are the kids hanging out on? What communities or social platforms are the kids using now? I assume it's not X. Well,
Web3 is still X.
Is it still Slack? Is it? I know plenty. Blue Sky. You got a lot of them out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of apps. Definitely not Facebook. Discord is still huge. There are still so many communities in Discord. I don't love Discord. I think it's, I was running our first application sort of connected Discord to other things. And so I was in Discord a lot and our customers at Discord, there was a bot aspect to our thing that was in Discord. And it just gets overwhelming. There's so much stuff going on in there and you lose notifications and it's really hard to track. I'm an old guy too, so maybe it's different when you're younger, but through our user research, a lot of people complained about that, both on the community manager side and on the end user side. TikTok. That's right, Jason. TikTok is a big one.
I know the Washington Post. I know the Washington Post is using it, but Mofaluke, what are your thoughts on communities being what they can be doing to be more helpful, or how are you using communities to help you in your product management role?
I kind of just agree with Drew. Just sort of seeing a group of your users in what I would call their natural element is super helpful because they're not answering a question that you've come up with and it's tailored to something you want to know. They're talking amongst their friends, and it's super interesting to actually see what they think. And people are very vocal when they think there's a problem. They will tell you, and they will tell their friends. So having a place like Reddit, for example, Reddit and just subreddits, it's full of all this information as to how people have interacted with products, what they liked, what they didn't like. It's it's pretty interesting. I haven't used a lot of TikTok for like product, but from a marketing perspective, it's pretty interesting, especially because a lot of the younger generation is using it as sort of this search engine. It's this end all be all. You know, it's the new Google, basically. So if we can find the right way to actually use TikTok, I actually think that would be pretty interesting.
I've seen I've seen a lot of people. I've seen growing trends of people actually searching for answers on TikTok. Myself, I used TikTok too much, so it has now been an uninstalled application on my phone to protect myself and everyone around me. The So I do find that pretty interesting. Um, uh, I am still curious though what. Especially when you're talking about Mofaluke, when you mentioned you use Reddit, are you just using the product management subreddit, or are there others that you found of use there?
For Reddit, I'm basically just scrolling around. I'm not in any particular channel, but if I find topics that are interesting, I sort of jump in and lurk. I think that's the right term. But yeah, I'm basically just jumping around. It's pretty interesting, all the discourse.
So I'm looking at our off-camera part of the roundtable right now, also pretty heavily in that. I am curious to see what other communities product managers are using to kind of up their game, as well as what gaps people are seeing in communities where the communities aren't serving certain needs that product people would like to see better served.
So
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I've never worked in a company where there was like a Discord community or a Reddit or like any sort of like organic online community before. But what I've created my own communities, like customer user groups. This was really in the days before Discord, where I've created them to create a user base that got together regularly, either virtually or actually in person, to be able to go to them, especially like when I was at Aetna. We had a core group of customers that we would go to, um, that we would look for their feedback on things. It's really funny, actually, a community right now, a very strange way that we've gotten some recent feedback at my current company is from a TV show. I don't know if anybody here has seen the show Industry. I think it's either, I can't remember if it's Showtime or HBO. One of those, but Industry, it's
Who
all
has
about.
that kind of time, Paul? We're all helping and serving our customers.
Of course, there's no free time whatsoever. Um, but it's a show that's all about financial market traders in a trading desk at some big, huge hedge fund in London, and they actually have our telecommunication systems sitting on their desks, right next to their Bloomberg terminals. So it's been really funny to us to see how the traders use them in the TV show, and we've shown the TV show to some of our customers, And they're like, they did a really good job in figuring out how it should be used, because that's really how we use it.
That's good.
That's funny. That's interesting. And my wife is a physician, and the medical thing is like universally wrong. She's always like, you would never like they wouldn't be wearing that kind of collar, or they'd be intubated when they're doing whatever thing they're doing. Like that.
Wait, hold on a second here, Drew. I watch Grey's Anatomy, and I'm
Oh my
pretty
God, that
sure
show
that it's
aggravates me
very
to no end.
accurate.
It aggravates me to no end. So I'm an emergency
No.
medical technician. I'm in emergency rooms all the time. I know a lot of the treatments that doctors will end up doing, and I watch every medical show, whether it's The Good Doctor, Grey's Anatomy, or ER, or whatever, and they all get it wrong.
No, Grey's Anatomy, dead on. I know that's all true. All true.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yep. And next on Fantasy Island.
Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
No, that was all I was adding to the conversation.
Sorry, I derailed the whole thing there. By the way, I didn't mention earlier, but Paul, I am impressed for doing this from the beach. And jealous too.
Yes.
Like
I wish I was
I'm here
at the
doing
beach.
it from the office. But yeah, it's looking good there.
Now.
Looking good. Don't get too much sun. Don't get too much sun.
No.
Yeah. So I wanted to go. I saw someone also mentioned, and I like the idea. This is an interesting idea. Is looking at the comments section in the App Store as almost kind of a mini or micro communities. This comes from Jason. Again, really a lot of great comments coming from Jason tonight. So awesome work there. I wanted to go over to go to another question, and this one came also from a conversation I was having with Drew about Web3, and put very bluntly, is Web3 dead? Does anyone have anything of Web3 on their roadmap? And actually, Drew, if you don't mind, can you just tell us what the heck Web3 is?
Yeah, I mean, Web3 is one of those things that was like invented to raise money, basically, by startups. But I think the general idea of how people, what they sort of associate it with, would be basically using blockchain technologies at the core to do something. But then where it goes from there, there's a lot of different interpretations. Some people include like these sort of VR environments and immersive sort of communities as Web3 too. And the idea was going the whole meta thing that Facebook did, like the metaverse and Snow Crash and all that, where we're like jacked in and we've got our Neuralink implants and our AR goggles on, and I think that's all part of it. And somehow blockchain is like inextricably intertwined in that vision.
Wait, isn't this Mark? Isn't you're talking? So is Web3 just Mark Zuckerberg's vision? Is that what we're saying Web3 is?
Well, I think people in Web3 would say he like co-opted it when it was popular and ruined it. That's their take on it probably, but yeah, it's Snow Crash vision. Neil Stevenson, right?
Oh yeah.
But
good book.
Yeah, it's a good book. But the general, I think now it's just sort of come down to most people just assume you're talking about what using smart contracts, using like Ethereum or some blockchain tool, and the idea is that really, and what's interesting about it to me is really all that it adds to the sphere of technology is the ability to create tokens and put things on a blockchain, right? And which means it's immutable and you can see it, and it's run sort of on a disparate group of computers so that nobody really owns it. And those are sort of the guiding principles of the general concept. And I think where it can be interesting is using these sort of tokens as reward mechanisms. A lot of people maybe don't know this, but Reddit actually had the largest NFT mint of anyone, right? Everyone's heard of Bored Ape Yacht Club and all these other NFT projects, but Reddit actually had the biggest one because they're just sort of using the technology behind the scenes to do digital collectibles. And if people want to move them to their wallets and trade them on the blockchain, they can, but they can just stay within your sort of user in Reddit. And I think that's the kind of thing that we might see in the future. I mean, Starbucks has their own NFT project. I don't know how well it's doing, called Odyssey. And it's sort of a rewards program. And what you do is if you go through some hoops, you have to like watch videos about their coffee and do other things. And then if you do that, then you can either get an airdrop of like a pumpkin spice NFT, or you can get the right to mint one and actually pay them money for it. So I don't know. Are these, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think there's a lot of uncertainty these days in terms of what is really going to happen. But the general idea I find very intriguing. The idea of tokens and this whole concept, another thing that's around it, and then I'll stop talking and let other people talk, is this idea of a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. And basically people can buy into this DAO and by buying some tokens, and that token then gives you a membership. So now you can vote on what happens within that DAO. And then that DAO can do all kinds of things. And there are a lot of different DAOs out there to do like civic good, that, for the environment, people get together to do this. And then, they've all pitched this money in to do things. Other people have done this to create like investors clubs. So everyone puts in $200, they get tokens that represent their share of the treasury, and then they take that money and then they vote on what they want to spend it on. And so then they can buy like these really expensive NFTs, or they can buy tokens, or they can do things, and they collect them and sell them. And then whatever is, they share that reward, or at any point they can sort of sell their shares into that group and move on to the next thing. So I think there's a lot of intriguing things coming out of it, but there's also a lot of garbage with, FTX and scammers and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I was looking up, see if anyone had a nice succinct definition of Web 3.0. Unfortunately, not. But basically, the key features for those who might be asking, is said to be decentralization, trustless and permissionless, AI, of course, connectivity, and ubiquity. Like one of the things we were talking about, Drew, earlier was. Like if blockchain is if blockchain is kind of a 23, I would assume a lot of companies, especially not assume, I know a lot of companies, especially when you're looking into finance, you're looking in finance and fashion, two industries that have a lot in common, are definitely doing a lot more with blockchain. And I think while a lot of us are think of blockchain, and a lot of this is years old, for a lot of these companies it's brand new. So yeah, it's still penetrating a lot of the companies, especially when you think of the fashion industry, where they're really trying to use blockchain for sustainability, for traceability of every garment that's made, where it's made, how it's made, who touched it, at which stage in the process, what companies it went through, to really have that kind of accountability. Finance, I don't need to say more there. And plus, they're still doing a lot of stuff with crypto in the finance world too. Even though it's not as hot too. A topic, it's still definitely a topic. Yep.
Ethereum,
with digital goods that you can buy and wear, just in our own little metaverses. Paul, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying Ethereum I posted the link in our private chat here, and I'll go and post it in the comments here, actually has a pretty good, at least I thought, didn't let me post that into the comments there, a pretty good explanation of Web3. It's actually, it quotes a 2020 tweet, or X, or I don't know what we're supposed to call these things now. Web 1.1 was read only. Web 2 is read write, and Web 3 will be read write and own.
But what does that mean?
That you'll act. The way I understand that is meaning that like when that with blockchain and with Web3, you'll be able to show ownership of data online and of virtual items or virtual objects online, that you'll be able to show that you own that.
Exactly. And think of it like these communities. So now you have like these NFT communities that came together. You once you bought an NFT, you like became a member of this club and you owned it. And if that club became more popular, then the value of your NFT would go up. So it's like when people have ownership in it, then they have a vested interest in promoting it, right? And I think that was what was behind Starbucks communities. Look, if we sell these NFTs, now not only are these people going to like read all our garbage about our company and all our, sorry, no offense to Starbucks, if anyone loves them, they're great, but learn more about our product. But now they're going to own these NFTs and they're going to want to promote Starbucks more so that their NFTs will have more value, right? And I think that's the idea is, you know, if you own a piece of something, you want it to be more popular.
Right. I've always had issues with those kinds of things. It's like, what kind of real value does that actually give you? It's perceived value, of course, but it doesn't. You can't trade it in for any sort of cryptocurrency, or unless I guess something you can. A great example of what of that ownership of data that a company that I was doing some consulting with, this was back when I was still in health tech. They were working to use blockchain to allow patients to own their data. You know, in too many instances now, it's it's all the companies that are the electronic health record companies that own the data, or the insurance companies that own the data. 15 years ago, there was a Google Health product that Google was trying to make it so that customers owned their medical record, that they would then give their doctors access to it. It died very quickly.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that. I believe I remember the CEO at the time. I remember. Um, I remember him being interviewed as to, hey, why are you trying to do this? And he goes, well, someone has to have the fight. I remember him making a statement like that, and then at the end, I think the follow up comment to that initial statement was, well, we couldn't win the fight because it was too regulated. we couldn't break through.
It's not you're right to a certain extent, but it was also got to a point where patients didn't really care enough to own their data back then. But then fast forward 10, 12, 15 years, and people want to start owning their data online again. I was actually, this company that I was working with, they were actually for customers in there. Don't get me started on like 23andMe and these Ancestry.com companies that you send them a swab of your DNA. Who owns that DNA data? They're charging you minimal cost to actually look at that and tell you your ancestry. But if you look at the terms and conditions of using that, they're basically not charging you a whole lot, because they reserve the right to use your data at some point in the future when they can monetize it.
But
That's
I
what
think
the
it's
whole
great.
platform is based on. So this
But
company
still,
that I
they're
was
doing all this research about it, which is amazing, right?
right, but
So, like,
then
yes, and they're also like they do surveys and stuff, and they're finding these connections of like this gene's connected to this, and people with this tend to have, you know, stinkier armpits or whatever. Like some of it's
Right.
useless, but some of it's helpful.
My problem
Wait, is that
with,
the finding you had when you used 23andMe? They said you 73%
No, but
chance
I
of stinky
remember getting a
armpit.
survey. They had a survey. It was like, do you have BO? That was like one of their things.
my big issue with these companies having that data is I could envision a time in the future where a life insurance company or a health insurance company denies you coverage
Yeah.
because they know your
You have
DNA
BRCA
data
or whatever.
and
Yeah.
whether you've got BRCA or some other sort of gene that is known to cause something, and they want to either charge you a lot more or deny you coverage because of that, because they have that data. So this company that I was consulting with, they were actually working on a 23andMe kind of an idea, but basically the patient, the person owned that data as almost like an NFT. And nobody could do anything with it because you owned that in blockchain with an NFT. So it couldn't be used without your knowing that the data was being used.
Yep.
That is an amazing way of using that kind of a thing that provides real tangible value for a person who's interested in that.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I know someone they have a company called XChain, and they actually have a patent for storing DNA on the blockchain, and they're using it for fertility. So basically, you like put your data on there, and they encode it, and whatever.
And kind of bringing some of the conversation a little bit full circle here. I did ask ChatGPT, and I've been having a conversation with it about how it would define Web 3.0. And the answer I got, I'll give you the short one because I'm not going to read a whole 2 sentences. I'm going to go for the 1 sentence answer that I made it right, which is Web 3.0 aims to make the internet smarter and more personalized for users. It also gives people more control over their own data. Earlier, it was telling me about the use of blockchain and AI and giving people more ownership over their data. Yeah, telling you, this ChatGPT, great way to kind of, especially once you turn the plugins on for like external links and everything, man, you can do some really cool stuff there. So does anyone have anything Web 3.0 in their roadmaps, or is it just Meta that does?
Meta actually killed their whole blockchain initiative. They Lyra or whatever it was, they got rid of it. So they don't even.
Well, I still have some AI, I guess. You can now have.
There's a lot of.
You have Mr. Beast tell you jokes. I was just gonna say you could have Mr. Beast tell you jokes now. I don't know what more anyone could possibly want.
Like going full circle to, I think, one of the first comments I made tonight. There's
another full circle. I'm getting dizzy.
There's so much regulatory and compliance issues in so many industries that have to be dealt with that the compliance and the regulatory haven't caught up to all of this new stuff that's out there. The AI, the NFTs, the blockchain, the Web3, etc. That some companies, like my current company, there's a lot of things that we won't touch because we don't know what governments around the world are going to dictate that can happen with the data that's produced by our product and by the users using the product.
Yep. So I'm not hearing anyone has anything Web3 in those roadmaps. So that's definitely interesting there. We got a little bit more time, and I know one of the things that Paul we were talking about, and we'll probably turn this into a larger topic at a future TPG live. But I was curious to hear about if people what kind of tips people might have for getting into product management.
Sure. I know I was the one who proposed that, so I'll jump into that one. Um, I've done a bunch of mentoring with the product mentor program, and even just outside. The number one tip that I tell people, or advice that I give to people to get into product management, if you're in a role that's adjacent to product management in a company, it's often easier to break into product management in the company that you're already in, just by proactively taking on additional things that you can do that a product manager would do, even if you don't have that title yet. So that when you want to break into that, you can say, hey, look at these things that I've done. I've done the work that a product manager would do. And you can then take that to maybe jump to another company and say, hey, look at all these things that I've done that a product manager would do. I have this experience. So and you can use that. The other piece of advice is companies, when they're looking for a product manager, they're looking for either domain expertise or they're looking for product management expertise. Um, they try and find some balance of those two. But if you're really strong in one or the other, it can help you. So, for example, if you intimately know an industry, one example that I always give, because this a woman that I helped mentor, she was extremely successful in this. She worked in higher education, in administration, admissions office at in a number of different higher education institutions. And she wanted to get into software. She wanted to get into product management. So the advice I gave her was look for companies that are doing software, that are building software or products that people in your kind of a role would use. And you can then come to that company and say, hey, I know college admissions and administration and registrar work intimately well. I can bring you that expertise to your products. So you can leverage that domain expertise if you don't yet have years of experience as a product manager and the expertise there. Use that domain expertise. So those are the two big pieces of advice that I usually give to people that want to break into product.
For me, it was a little different because I came from a tech background and I made a deliberate move to marketing so I could break out of which was something I call speaking like a dev. Devs speak in coding language and forget about that human interaction piece. So I tried to move into something with a more human touch, which I felt at that point was marketing. And that sort of opened up my mind and asking the right questions. Someone said being curious. That is sort of what led me to the path I'm on. So yes, domain expertise is super important. It's great if that's what you have, but if you're pivoting from a hardcore tech background and you want to move into products, sometimes you really need to have that because your job is really to be a translator. You work with all these different departments and you have to be able to speak like a human being. So I usually recommend that. Learn to speak human. It's a little more difficult than it sounds.
The times I've heard that. Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the things that both Mofaluka and Paul said. Certainly within your own company, look for those opportunities. Even if it's just an internal product or something, just let people know that you're interested. You'd be surprised how people are willing to help, and that happens in the world at large as well. I've mentored people, both that work for me, but also people that have just been like curious and interested and have messaged me from, based on a post I made on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. And I'm happy to answer questions from people. And the other thing I would say is, like, if you're a product manager, you have to be a builder and you have to be interested in shipping. And so it's like anything you can do to build sort of a portfolio and to show your work is great. Think about products, think about what you would do to change this product or that product. It's merely having the exercise of doing that is going to teach you a lot about the mind space of a product manager. And hackathons are a great way to, a lot of people think hackathons are just for devs. But if you go to a hackathon or do an online hackathon, you'd be surprised. They love having a product person there because you can sketch out a product for them and you can organize it and you can help them to sort of control the flow of building it and make sure they get something built instead of just churning. So those kind of things can be really helpful. And then you have something to show too after the hackathon. If you win, that's even better. So just do it is sort of my thought as best you can. Like find somewhere you can do it, even if it's for free, and do it.
Great. Yeah, we'll spend more. We'll do the deeper dive into this topic in a future roundtable discussion. Thank you to everybody who joined us on camera, all of you here, everyone who joined us off camera and made for our amazing roundtable discussion. I can tell you some of my key takeaways from the cellular pill bottles, which I guess is going to be my top takeaway of the night. Less is more, complexity of simplicity, different ways of using communities for support, breaking into product management, a lot of great tips there. And just a lot of great feedback, great comments from our off-camera roundtable here.
This was a fun chat.
Thank you, everyone.
Again, I want to thank all of our off-camera roundtable attendees for their engagement and for submitting thought-provoking questions and comments throughout the discussion. Your participation is what makes these podcasts truly invaluable for the product management community. Whether you're an engineer, a brand new product manager, a designer, a salesperson, a chief anything officer, or merely product management curious, your perspective, questions, insights, and stories enrich our conversations. We invite you to be part of our on-screen roundtable and engage in these lively discussions. Don't hesitate to reach out by emailing me at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. There are always more topics to cover, so in the comments below, let me know what you'd like to hear discussed in future episodes. To stay up to date on all things product management, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks again to everybody. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation on our next TPG Live, where diverse perspectives, continuous learning, and expansive innovation are empowering the product mindset one discussion at a time. Now go and amplify your impact.